So you studied 5 years in India, after that in UK. What is a major shift in mindset?
I got called by the principal of the school. Devika, girls take craft, boys take electronics. So you change your option. I think that's the first time I felt unfairness. In my entire education, I was asked about my voice.
So how friendly is the UK today for Indian students?
It is a country which is very open.
Open in terms of what?
That you don't get branded as Indian, Indie. Though I was speaking to people who were British also, tagged me as, oh, you are not from this country, what would you do?
Which UK scholarships are actually achievable for Indian students?
The fact that they are able to think beyond the box. That can be done, say, through extracurricular activities, through various kind of philanthropic ventures, etc. Apart from that, it is also the risk the student can take, because the scholarship wants you to look at emerging areas.
Somebody told me, Abhishek, you should do law. Okay, why? Because there are beautiful girl will come.
Beautiful girl भी law सीख के आएगी.
Devika ji, welcome to the Founder's Dream.
Namaste. Thank you so much for having me here.
How are you, ma'am?
I'm doing good, thank you.
How's things in life?
Things in life are great. I'm now on the side of life which is closer to 50. Okay, I realize I'm becoming more and more idealistic in my maturer age.
Wow.
I thought I'd started as an idealistic student and then tempered down. But now I'm an idealistic founder, dreamer. Okay, so things are good.
Founder. So what is your main mission vision, ma'am? A founder.
As a founder? See, I never imagined myself to be a founder. I'll tell you quite clearly. I mean, if you think about the background that I come from a service class family. My parents were both in the army, both doctors, okay, served the nation. I don't think anyone ever thought that I would be in a business, have a business, all of that. We always thought about things in terms of, okay, maybe bureaucracy, maybe, maybe law, maybe a creative line, but always as a job. Okay. So, and interestingly enough, it was my parents only who gave me the wings to start my own business. So, the strength really comes from there. But they themselves had no clue and I had no clue.
Every founders, I think I have done more than 500 podcasts. Yeah. And I think more than 80% founders are founded accidentally.
You use the right word, accidental founder.
So I think you were in UK, right?
Yes.
So what pushed you to study in UK and build a career across law and inclusion?
Oh God, there's a very long answer to that and a very short answer to that.
I'm relaxed, cool.
Depends. Do you want the long answer or the short?
I want long answer.
So you want long answer, okay. So see, my long answer was first on why I got interested in law. Okay, so once again, I never knew I'm going to go towards law. Our time pe jo hai, and since I'm talking like 25 years back, okay. So at our time, there used to be this all India assessment, like this aptitude assessment test that you used to have. And I was a lost soul. I had no idea what I want to do. I was good in a lot of things, and that's what happens, when you're good in a lot of things, you become like a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. So I gave this aptitude test saying, okay, I'll get my answers from this one, okay. And unfortunately, the result was I can do anything I want to do.
Wow.
Okay.
No,
not for good, not for me. It wasn't good for me because, well, I wanted an answer. So I actually started from there, where I did not have answers. I had a lot of choices. I didn't have answers to it. One day something happened which was interesting, okay. At our time, we used to have subject streams that had to be chosen. And in those subject streams, one of the options that was available was this option between electronics and craft. Okay, now I knew my craft, all right. I'd done all my work with my grandmother and everything. Electronics was something that interested me. Okay, so I ticked the electronics box and said, okay, great. I'm going to do electronics along with my main subjects. I got called by the principal of the school. And very casually, very, no drop beat, no nothing, okay. The principal says, Devika, girls take craft, boys take electronics. Okay, so you change your option. I think that's the first time I felt unfairness. Okay, because why? Why was this so casual? Why was this so taken for granted? Why was this not being questioned, and who put this? And I think that's when the lawyer in me woke up.
Great incident.
Yeah, and of course I fought the institution. I managed to keep my option as electronics. In fact, few other girls also joined me in the electronics class, and that's when I saw a revolution. So it's very interesting. See, when you push people who have never been there to a new environment,
Correct.
they also have to adapt, and the environment also has to
Right,
adapt.
right.
Okay. So first, of course, when we got into electronics class, we were questioned for our motives. We were questioned for, oh, you want to do boys things, oh, you want to be near the boys, so all of that. So those labels, okay, you live with those labels. And then after around a month, the boys came to us and said, we are so glad you people are in the class. And we're like, why? I mean, before that, we were just objects of being looked at, all right? They said, the teachers changed. He is no longer abusing us. Okay, he used to hit us with a ruler. He is no longer doing that. Because of the girls in the class, he is now behaving himself.
Perspective change हो जाता है.
बिल्कुल. Perspective change हो जाता है. And I think somewhere that is what led to me knowing I want to be a lawyer. That is what led to me knowing I want to talk about equity. I want to ensure that there are equitable workplaces. Okay, and really the journey for law started from there. And that's how I ended up in law college in Pune. And I had these excellent 5 years in Pune. I'm always very thankful to my legal education in India because it gave me the perspective for all my education internationally. Okay, I've since then studied in the UK, I've studied in the Netherlands, my doctorate was from Netherlands. Okay, but my education in India is what crafted me to understand practicality, knowledge, research, and the importance of discipline.
So let's talk about the Pune education, right?
Sure.
5 year you studied
Sure.
there.
Yes.
Okay. So how's the law education in India first? Is it good, bad, crazy, or are you learning there or not learning there?
Okay, so see, these are completely different questions. Good, bad, crazy, learning there, it depends on what area of law you're going to go to.
Okay.
Indian legal education is excellent because it draws on our strengths that our education system right up to our 12th builds on us. Okay, we learn by rote. Memory is something which is brushed, taken on. In fact, now I know the world is changing, with ChatGPT, I think meri to memory ja rahi. All right, I can just imagine how younger people are feeling right now because everything seems to be coming out of, a laptop for them.
Yeah.
Okay, but at our point of time, you had to read 10 books to come to a paragraph.
Right.
Right? So those are things that the Indian education system and the education system for law in India really builds up. It builds your muscles.
Correct.
Okay.
Memory muscles, or?
Yeah, memory muscles, skill-based muscles, the discipline to sit for hours, okay, and do things which may be acknowledged as boring. Okay, it does that.
Correct.
All right. Now, it's simple. If you don't build core muscles, you can't do more flighty-whitey things.
Right.
Right? Okay. So, I will never diss in Indian education because it built my core. Okay. And the only issue, and that is only when you transcend to the point where you built your muscles, is that once you build your muscles, you realize you're in a cage. Okay. Because agility is something that Indian legal education lacks.
Correct.
All right. It gives you fantastic structure, fantastic discipline, routine, all of that. But it is not able to think beyond the box. You learn the box.
But why?
I think it's more because of the fact that a lot of our memory, rote system, etc., the evaluation is how much you are able to recall of what others say.
Correct.
So, for example, when say I am writing an essay on the Constitution in India, okay, say for my legal education here, and say I'm writing an essay on the Constitution of the country, I will be required to quote Sirvai, Durga Das Basu. Pardon me for all the legal references that I'm dropping, but these are renowned scholars, okay, on the Constitution of the country. They have treatises, 12, 15 books that have just been written on our Constitution.
Correct.
Okay, so your essay is understood in its worth by how much you are able to recall and apply what others think.
Correct.
But it was when I went for my international education that is when I realized that it's not about what others think. And now that's a different story. You asked me about Pune, so I'm going to stick to that.
Let's stick to Pune. After that, we'll compare the UK education and Indian
Absolutely.
education both.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, what is the craziest thing you have done in your college life?
Oh God. Sorry to say, but I was quite a rebel. I was a good child because I was coming from an army background. So I had all the ethics, fire, all of that was there. But then, of course, being a go-getter, okay, always got me into strange places. Fine. I remember one point of time, and this is an anecdote that very few people even know. Like, so I used to sing in college, and I still sing.
Wow.
Okay, so I used to take part in competitions and everything. And at that point of time, none of us had a car. Okay, cars weren't something that was regular for students.
Correct.
Okay, fine. So I used to use what we used to call the 11 number wali bus. My feet. Okay, walk around everywhere. All right. And one person in my batch got a car. Just for a short spell. Parents were out, got the car in, and said, I've got the car. It was very exciting. We have a car. Okay. So we said, kya kare? And right at that point of time, the expressway between Mumbai and Pune was being built. It hadn't been completed, but it was being built. So he said, okay, what we'll do is we'll go to the expressway and we'll see, how fast the car goes on that and everything. Thrilling, but student budget, okay? So we pooled together our money and realized that we only have money for say around 2 liters or 3 liters of petrol. So we plotted the route and said, acha, we have to take the first U-turn and come back, okay? Otherwise, we're going to run out of fuel. As luck would have it, we overshot. Okay, and we found ourselves in, because now you don't even have a exit point and you don't even have enough fuel to get back. So he said, we have to carry on. We landed up in Lonavala. And we landed up in Lonavala in the middle of the night. So the only place that was open was this 5-star hotel. At that point of time, 24/7 was not a known concept. So it was this 5-star hotel. We only had enough for 1 cup of coffee. Okay, because we had to also pay for the fuel to come back. So we land up at this 5-star hotel, which is the only safe place to be. All right. And we have 1 cup of coffee. And they also know that we can only afford this 1 cup of coffee. Okay. So we sat there saying, Jabi, when this cup finishes, what's going to happen next? Because we have about 6 hours to take out till the fuel pump opens. Okay. And I saw a piano there. And my friend played the piano. So I said, come, let's give them a performance. For the next 6 hours, we sang for our supper. They fed us. Hotel residents came and listened to us. My friend played. I sang. Okay, it was a beautiful thing. They gave us breakfast in the morning. Then we went to the fuel pump. We filled fuel and came back.
Wow. Great opportunity. You got it there.
Yeah. So that's something I really remember from my college days in Pune. One major incident that even now some of, the friends who were in that incident, we sit and we talk about that crazy night.
Who taught you singing? Father or mother?
No, my mother's a fantastic singer.
That's why.
Yeah, my father is a singer too, but my father is a singer because of his bravado and his appetite. My mother is a singer because of her precision and her actual knowledge of music.
Correct. So that time I think you thank her. Oh my.
I always. I'm always very grateful to my parents. They've made me what I am, So, I mean, there is, I couldn't have asked for a better set.
Somebody told me, Abhishek, you should do law. Okay, why? Because there are beautiful girl will come. Is it true?
I mean, beautiful girl will law seek ke aayegi. That I don't know. So, see my
that
time.
was the perception on the tier 2, tier 3 cities, guys.
It's a really good perception. Abhishek, my time was different. I remember I had, I was the topper in the boards, okay, for my year when I went to law college and applied for my admission. At that point of time, and now of course I know there is a very, very exhaustive and competitive exam to get through to law college. But at that point of time, it was an interview system, okay. So since I was the topper, I was called first, so they were basically calling in people as per their rank in the boards. And the question that I got asked by my interview panel was, you have such good marks. Why do you want to do law?
Oh my God.
At that time, the perception on law was very different. Okay, people believe that if you've got really good marks, you should be looking at, medicine, engineering.
I think you're talking about 2000,
I am
2002?
talking about 1998.
Around 2000, right?
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So the perception on law was very different. I don't think anybody thought that koi sundar ladka
In,
aayega.
in 2006, I think somebody told me.
Yeah.
मैं कहा, नहीं, मैं नहीं कर रहा जाके.
No, but things really changed. Things really changed. And I think one thing that really changed for legal education in India was also the national law schools coming together.
Correct, correct.
Okay. So that really brought a certain quality. The 5-year law course. And I think I was one of the first few, few years in the 5-year law course, because till then we used to have the 3-year graduate, postgraduate law course. So the 5-year law course really changed the way in how people approach law. You started realizing that critical thinking as, a lawyer is something that starts right from after 12th, and then you apply it to everything. I know a lot of people who after 5-year law have gone on to do other things also.
Correct.
Okay. But that changed the quality, because people weren't doing law as any longer as, a second career or as a second thought. Okay. They went into it with the fire and passion to do it. And also what happened around that point of time, around, the turn of when we got into 2000, was that the market really opened up to law beyond just litigation. Okay, with corporate law really building up, infrastructure coming in, okay, fine, and private equity later, and now of course technology, all right. The idea that a lawyer just has to wear a black coat and be in courts drastically changed.
Absolutely
Okay.
right.
Yeah. So, and particularly I think for women it became a major push, because women always have had traditionally a barrier in litigation practice. Okay, particularly if you're looking at the criminal side, etc. There's always been a barrier. But that barrier started really coming down because of all these avenues of law that opened up.
So you studied 5 years in India, after that in UK. What is a major shift in mindset?
Oh, huge, immense. So after my 5 years of law, I actually did a year of practice. Okay, so I worked as a litigator and as a corporate lawyer. I wanted to try both areas. Okay, so my firm at that point of time was kind enough to accommodate me. All right, and I worked in both the areas to understand where I really want to be. And I went for my master's because I realized that while practice is great, I still was that tinkering student who wanted to know how the device functions.
Correct.
Okay, fine. All right. Okay, fine. This is the book. This is what I'm supposed to do. But why? That why is something that always appealed to me, that I wanted to understand that. And I hadn't got those answers in my Indian, in my Indian law education. 5 years of it, I knew the law. Okay. I understood its application. I understood its practicality. I did not know the why of it. Okay. Now, when I went to the UK, and this is where things went through a drastic change, there are a couple of things that happened. First thing was, I would say it was an amalgamation of kindness, luck, privilege, all right, all of it. Because this is what my father said to me, all right. My father said, beta, see, we're from a service class family. I told you, defense, okay. Said, beta, either I can save money towards your marriage, or I can save money towards your master's.
Education.
Okay, you take your pick. Now, I was very clear that I wanted to go in for my master's. Okay, but it just made me think, because see, when you know that there are limited resources, all right, then there is a sense of gravitas that comes to your decisions. Okay, because it's not like everything's on a platter, right? You want to work hard for it.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Right.
so I started applying for scholarships. Fine. So I spent that 1 year in Delhi working as well as applying for scholarships, saying, let me apply for scholarships. And God was very kind. And that's where I bring the luck and the kindness factor into it. Okay, fine. God was very kind. I ended up getting scholarships from Shivning, from DFID, okay, the Shell scholarship. I mean, all of them. And I was once again spoiled for choice. But again, I'm going to say it with great humility. Okay, it was tremendous hard work, but it was also a lot of luck. All right. So when that happened, I was able to go to the UK on a scholarship. Now, this is what changes for when you go on a scholarship as opposed to when you take a student loan and go. See, when you take a student loan and go for higher education, your mindset is to take up subjects that give you a good ROI.
Correct. Right.
Return on investment, employability, because see, eventually you want to come back and you want to pay that.
Right.
Okay, or you want to, utilize avenues to be able to pay that off. Since I didn't have that burden, okay, I was able to take up subjects that I could ideate over. So, see, now a UK education is fantastic because it gives you a mix of everything. Number one, getting to a college where you realize that there is no set stream, okay, no set basket. You can choose intersectionality across board. Okay, so that's the first thing that strikes you as wow. All right. So I remember I took a combination of media law, arbitration, law, technology, and global governance. I mean, things which, people would say, okay, does this actually make sense? Fine. But all of it was with evolving technology and understanding how we can become less court dependent and move to alternate forms of resolution, particularly in these emerging technology spheres, emerging legal spheres, policy spheres, etc. So, the first thing that changed for me, of course, was due to that little act of kindness and grace from God, okay, getting to the UK with that kind of mindset. That was number one. All right. The other thing that really helped, when I got there was something that we call the fishing period. Okay.
Fishing period.
Yeah. So when you're a young student, when you go in for your go to a college and you're making up your mind on subjects, and this is something that I thought was very good as opposed to how it is in India. Okay. The first month you can go and attend every possible lecture. Okay, so every possible subject, every possible lecture, and till your first month, your subjects are not frozen. Okay, you make your mind sitting in the classroom. So, so there are various things that make you decide such things, whether you like the professor, whether you like the style of the class, all of that. Okay, so that first month was fantastic. It was eye-opening for me, very different from the fact that I have to throw my lot in, as you would in an Indian education, right? You have to decide before.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and wahan you can actually go and experience and then make up your mind around it. So that was the next thing which was excellent about that kind of education. Okay. The third bit was very interesting because I sat in, for example, my law, technology and global governance fishing lecture. Okay, where I sat there trying to make up my mind. So it went something like this. The professor came in. The professor said, "This is the first year that we are introducing this class, okay, this particular subject. So there are no past papers to go on. 50% of the lot got up and left. And that is not rude. That's another beauty that I'll come to later about that system. Okay, fine, because you're there to make a choice. No one can really question you on it. How many lectures have you sat through just out of
correct
respect?
I'm getting it.
Okay, fine. 50% of the people right at that first instance, no past papers. They got up and they walked away.
50% left.
Okay. Then the professor carried on to say, we are going to craft the syllabus as we go along. Another 20% got up. Now that there isn't even a syllabus. Fine, we're going to. And the 5% of everybody who remained, in which I was too, we were the eager beavers. Okay. We were like, wow, we're going to be here making history, breaking ground. This is a new milestone. All right. So, you had classes like that. And then, of course, you had classes like, and as I described my media and technology class, which had professors who had only read papers of. I mean, such authorities on their subject coming and lecturing us. So think about it. It's like a huge platform just opens out to you. You are right there with making things and building them. And you're also there with the established, with that heritage, that legacy that, law often has. So I think that was brilliant. That was the brilliant bit about studying in the UK.
This is called founder's mindset actually. You are building something for your colleagues.
Yeah.
Right? I think this particular system has to be implemented in India, and you also mentioned about rude things.
Oh,
in India, if it is there, then ये क्या कर दिया आपने?
बिल्कुल. And I think that was another factor. The fact that so there were certain reluctances also. Like, for example, all our professors told us to call them by their first name. It never could come out of my mouth. Okay. whether you call it the Indian education or the generation I was from or whatever, there is no way on earth. So I used to do that, I used to basically just say prof or professor, okay, because they didn't want me to use sir, and I could not use their first name.
Wow.
All right, but that also tells you about the manner in which the instruction is. Or in fact, I think calling it instruction would also be wrong, because instruction suggests that one person is telling you what to do. Okay, and instead what was happening was a two-way street. It was a dialogue.
Absolutely right.
So with your professors there, that's what I felt. I felt that it was always a dialogue rather than them telling me what to do. And that also got me into some trouble at certain points of time. Okay. I remember I had my first submission and I was very excited about it. See, I had a lot to prove, right? I'm a scholarship student. I'm coming there and everything. Supposedly top of the class, top of the batch. Okay, things to prove back to people in India also. All of that. Okay, so I think I went completely crazy on how much I researched for that essay. Okay, everything possible got plotted. Everything possible got put down on paper. Beautiful English, as elegant as I could make it, etc. I would say, till that point of my life, that was my most well-written essay. And I hand it over to my professor in media and technology. And my professor comes back to me after 3 days and says, Devika, I read your essay. And I was like, oh, great. And I'm expecting accolades, okay? I really worked hard on that one, okay? So I said, oh, fantastic, okay? I said, it's beautifully written. It's great English. You have researched things so well. I now know what everybody has to say on the subject. I don't know what you have to say on it. Now, see, this is a radical moment. This is actually what I call a life-affirming moment for me. And I don't know whether that professor even realized the path they set me on. Because it was the first time in my life, in my entire education, that I was asked about my voice. I knew what to say about other people's voices. I did not know my voice. And they sent the essay back. Okay, my professor said, go back and rewrite it. And then I met my first major challenge, because in my whole life, that question had never been asked to me. It took me 10 days to go back with a resubmission of only crafting my voice, okay, on that particular topic. But I kid you not, it changed my perspective. It changed my perspective on education, on life, on the way my life carried on after that. Because ek cheez hoti hai that when you find your voice, then no one can take it from you.
Absolutely right, ma'am. Everybody has to find their voice.
Yes.
That's why you're in inclusion.
Yes, that is correct. Helping people
Correct.
find their voices.
Wow. So how friendly is the UK today for Indian students?
See, it's an interesting world that we're living in now. And now I don't think of it any longer as a student, right? I also think of it as a parent. I have a 12-year-old. Sometime or the other, I would want my child to aspire, okay, to study internationally. So the fears that my parents probably had at that point of time are actually very different from the fears that I hold as a parent now, so many years later. But parents here, so fears will always be there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Indian parents or other foreign parents. Same.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, even today, okay, I can never say that for my parents I have moved anywhere beyond a child.
Correct.
All right, even if I have my own child, but that's the way it is. I think that's the beauty also of Indian families, okay, and of our culture. But so I'm going to approach your question more from the perspective of a parent rather than a student. I feel that right now in the phase of life I'm in, I'm better equipped to handle it like that.
Correct.
Okay, I may not be able to get myself into the mindset of a student, okay, to talk about it. So, from what I remember of the UK, and of course I have been there not only as a student, but then I went back for work, I went back as a guest, I went back as a visitor, I went back as a tourist, all right. It is a country which is very open, okay.
Open in terms of what?
Okay, so I'll be clear on that. You never get branded as an Indian student.
Wow.
Okay, and I think that requires, that requires to be sung about. Okay, it needs to be acknowledged that you don't get branded as Indian, indie when you are there, and particularly at that level of education. Okay, you come forward as a student, not Indian student. Okay, now that changes the way you get included in activities. Okay, for example, at King's, I was a King's ambassador.
King's ambassador.
Yeah, so okay, God, that sounds like an honorary title. It's not. Okay, it was basically me as a student ensuring I can do every possible part-time job. Okay, but so King's ambassadors used to be the ones who used to welcome new people and even their parents to campus, take them around, show them various things. Okay, take them and show them the whole life beyond the campus also and everything. Okay, so I used to do this part-time job when I was there, and I don't think anyone ever tagged me as, oh, you are not from this country, what would you know? Okay, so though I was speaking to people who were British also, who were coming from various other countries, they never really questioned me on my Indian identity. That's the same thing with professors. There was never any form of stereotype. Okay, that was really there. And I still see that. Fine. And that gives me a lot of, it gives me a lot of comfort from studying in the UK. That I know that when my child goes there, my child will go there and be included, fine, and will not have to face barriers, fine. So I would actually say that it's a good place to be, considering how closed the rest of the world seems to be becoming.
If a person graduates from the law, okay, and I think he do not have any jobs in India. This is true, first thing. Second, if you are graduate from the UK, then what kind of real job opportunity will get over there?
And
somebody also said me कि यार we need to work for 300 or 400 rupees as a law student. How true it is?
Well, see, so it is true that in India there can be jobs in the legal field that can range from, जैसे आपने describe करा, 300-400 rupees. Okay, थोड़ा सा little more. Okay, now.
1,000 rupees.
All right, it is true that can happen. But then there is also a lot of growing opportunity in India that allows people to command very high salaries. I think this is more a matter of the field you choose in law rather than anything else. Okay. Now, see, it's always a dream, right? The dream always is that I'm going to study abroad and then I will work abroad. Okay. I had a little different dream. Fine, little different dream. My dream was that I'll study abroad, I might even work abroad, but I want to come back to my country. Now, this is because of the fact that, see, I was a defense kid through and through. Okay, so somewhere that military mindset, it does matter. Right. All right, because you are a patriot through and through, you're a nationalist. Okay, you want to come back and you want to build the Indian story.
Upbringing matters, basically.
Exactly. So, it really depends on how a person is feeling. I will not say one thing is bad or the other thing is good. I would not say that. I would say it is about where you are in that juncture in life. See, now compared to our time, the UK has actually made it much easier for students. I know that there is now the graduate visa route, okay, which is there. So people can stay back, they can work, all right. So you explore, and you explore if that's your dream. Correct. Right? So definitely at least the avenue is there. Now, I was a scholarship student. Okay, so I had a very limited time period for which I could stay. In fact, I went back afterwards as part of my corporate career. I went back afterwards and probably worked a little longer in the UK before I came back to join the government of India. Okay, but now as a student, you go, you explore, you stay there, you see what it's like, and then you decide what you want to build.
Absolutely.
Are you building yourself? Are you building your wealth? Do you want to come back and build your nation? What is it that your education has really grafted in you? Okay, and where do you want to further it?
Right.
So I think in that sense, today's world has a lot of opportunity that's available to students for that.
In 2026-27, I think, which UK scholarships are actually achievable for Indian students?
Oh God, I I am very, very, I will say very uh, honestly and authentically that I may be a dinosaur to be able to comment on that. Okay. I don't know. I do know that there are multiple buckets of scholarships which continue even from my time. Okay. So there is the DFID, there's the Shivning, there's Shell. Okay. These are there. There are also, of course, your typical scholarships that are coming from Cambridge. Fine. I am familiar with these because I had, of course, applied for all of these. There are all the various scholarships, even partial scholarships that are coming in from the British Council. All universities also have their own programs. Okay, so you can go to a college's website and you can check whether they are giving rebates, etc., to certain meritorious students. The one thing that I would want people to understand is the scholarship mindset. Okay, so first, of course, please understand that scholarships may not go to where things have already been established.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of scholarship is to encourage new thought.
Absolutely right. Yes.
Right. So a student needs to in their resume when they apply be able to showcase the fact that they are able to think beyond the box. That can be done, say, through extracurricular activities, through various kind of philanthropic ventures, etc. Okay. But apart from that, it is also the risk the student can take. Fine. Because the scholarship wants you to look at emerging areas. Fine. So if you are a student who says that I only want to do ABC so that I can get a job that does XYZ, then you are not even in that scholarship mindset.
Wow.
Okay.
Great perspective, ma'am. So how has workplace inclusion in India changed through your work with POSH Act?
My work with the POSH Act, as much as being an accidental founder, was also something which was quite accidental. There's an interesting story behind that.
Please
So-
share.
So when I was in law college, human rights was an area of law that largely looked at, conflict situations. Okay. And with my military background, it was very difficult for me to associate with that.
Correct.
Because I've seen the flip side, right? Fine. Whichever confrontation our country has had, I have been on the other side. Okay. And on the other very vulnerable side, fine, with my parents facing things and me being on the back of them. So at least in my time when I went to law college, and there would be this, school of law which was about human rights and it was all about conflict, etc. I actually was not able to relate to it. Truthfully. And interestingly enough, I now, if someone were to ask me to put a big label on myself, I say, okay, fine, big label is human rights lawyer. But that is also something which came up when I realized that that label is not as insular as some may think. Okay. Like, for example, when you're called a feminist, all right, then people say, oh, that means you only work for females.
Correct.
But it's a label which actually isn't so insular. You're working for equity. All right. So I'm a proud feminist. So now I'm a proud human rights lawyer also. Okay. The whole connection that comes in is that when I went to the UK and I came back from the UK after my education, I came back to believe that I am going to be a good corporate lawyer. Fine. So I was a good corporate lawyer. I was, the new field that was opening up was infrastructure. Okay. India was really looking at building up on its ports infrastructure, its national highways infrastructure. For the first time, PPPs had come in. All right, concession agreements and all of that. So as a corporate lawyer, that was the area that I really found myself being very excited about, and I sat with it and all. Then 2008 happened, the recession that we faced.
2008, 9, 10.
Yes.
Wow, it's a
Yeah. Okay. In that recession, infrastructure deals dried up. Okay. Private equity deals dried up. And I was now sitting with one of the leading law firms in India with a team that was reporting to me with no work to do because of what had happened. And at that point of time, what we realized was that the labor and employment industry, okay, it was really going through a major shakeup. Because see, in the recession, a lot of people lost jobs. A lot of people were let go. Okay, so we found that there is a lot of demand that is coming in for lawyers who can work, with people on that side of the law. So immediately, and agility was something that of course I learned in the UK. So, so we pivoted, okay, and we started taking up labor and employment. Now, this is where I realized that, see, recession to sabke saath hua. Everyone was facing recession. Everyone was facing, the good, bad, indifferent of it. But I saw very up close that it was hitting people differently depending on the agenda. Okay. There were a lot more women who were losing jobs. Fine. There was a lot more discrimination that was happening on the basis of sex and gender. And I could see that this is definitely happening. We are seeing more harassment. More women are being harassed rather than men being harassed. More families were thinking of women who were very educated, very capable, suddenly as the second earners. Okay, fine. The breadwinner who was the male was being given priority, etc. I could see it very closely. And see, by this time I had a voice. Fine. So what I couldn't call out earlier, I could call out now. So I started working with, just on a pro bono basis, I started working with the Ministry of Labour and Employment. Fine. And said, what are the policies that we have to ensure inclusion? What is it that we can craft on? Now, again, the strength and the confidence to even go and put my fingers in that pie came from the fact that I had done subjects such as law, technology and global governance syllabus we have to make as we go along. So here I was making the syllabus as we go along. Okay. So it again, so people definitely, they do treat you differently when they know you're coming with the pedigree of a UK education. Okay. You've done a master's internationally, you're coming and you're speaking to them in their offices. There are doors that open.
Correct.
Okay. And there are people who are willing to listen. Right? So I went and I spoke to a lot of folks and I said that what can we do which makes things more inclusive, which ensures that when something hits like this, it is something where the vulnerable are insulated from. And that's the first time that the word vulnerability entered my dictionary.
Wow.
Okay. Once I started studying vulnerability, and of course we went over the recession also, that is when vulnerability for me started shaping in various ways. It wasn't just about young mothers who are trying to re-enter the workplace. It was about young students, okay, who are trying to enter the workplace. I mean, today that vulnerability has gone to the point where we are talking about people with different sexual identities and orientations, okay, who are entering the workplace. So vulnerability, and when you start thinking of vulnerability, it can hit any of us at any point of time. You may think as an able man, you're not vulnerable. But the moment you have your child and suddenly people know that you are divided, okay, you are vulnerable. Fine. Or the moment that support structure at home goes away, where you've always, say, traditionally had your mother and everyone having your back, okay, when that goes away, you are vulnerable. So vulnerability is also not about sex or gender, it's about circumstances. Okay. So when I started looking at that very closely, I started looking to see whether our laws and policies can really cope with vulnerability. Okay, how agile are they when we start looking at various sections of society that are vulnerable? That led me to a conversation with the Ministry of Women and Child Development, which led me to working with the National Mission for Empowerment of Women. I led their gender rights, gender-based law enforcement domain, and then various things happened that were the winds of change happening. They happened post the Nirbhaya case that happened in Delhi. I was with the government of India at that point of time. Maybe a lot of people don't even remember the Nirbhaya case, but it was a very unfortunate happened in Delhi. All right. And that gang rape led to national outrage. Since people came to the streets, there were candlelight marches all over. The government started looking actively at what can be done to augment laws. I was at the right moment, at the right time, at the right place. I was right there. And I could then help the government craft and I could contribute to various laws that were in the making. Of course, I stood on the shoulders of stalwarts, okay, who had already worked so hard, as I again say, with great humility and gratitude, just luck of being able to give the final push. All right. And the month my son was born was also the month when the Sexual Harassment Act came out. Okay. And from that, of course, from 2013 is when I started then working on the implementation of that law, apart from looking at other policy, for example, the Maternity Benefit Act that extended with its amendment to 6 months, the maternity period of leave. Okay. So then I moved to the Ministry of Law and Justice. I worked with the UN for a spell. But there comes a point where that you're speaking what other people are speaking, and maybe you're even speaking to other people to ensure something happens, but it's still not your vision. See, having a vision with compromise built into it is also a necessity of politics and good temperament.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Okay. But being able to craft your vision with no holds barred, that is what gave birth to Cohere. Okay, which is the company I founded, Cohere Consultants. I moved away from the government and I started hand-holding corporates, moving them from compliance to actually building a culture of inclusion. Okay, so that shift and that journey, it's like a full circle for me in life,
Wow.
But again, all of it
It's
linked
complete
to
circle.
yeah, all of it linked to finding my voice.
So one last question for this podcast, ma'am. So what is your one key advice for students planning to study in UK?
Be exploratory. Don't think that you know what you want. Be open to more. Because we definitely go with a vision, and these days I know vision boards are encouraged.
Right.
Right? So everyone has a vision. They've got ABCD on their vision. But when you go, of course, with a structure, but with that openness to be able to embrace whatever gets thrown your way,
Right.
that is where you'll find opportunity, because the best opportunities come in accident.
Absolutely right, ma'am. Wow. Thank you so much, Devika ma'am, for coming in the podcast.
Thank you so much. It was fantastic being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.